Hello and welcome to our 1909 schoolhouse. Our 1909 schoolhouse was built in the architecture form of the railroad, and therefore it has looks kind of like an old depot in a way. Up on the cupola at the top is a bell. This is the bell that would be ringing if you were it was time for you to come to school. The bell has a number on it, and the number tells how far away the bell can be heard. It was donated by the Southern Pacific Railroad. Now, our schoolhouse did not, in 1909, have any plumbing or electricity. So they had to get the water from the pump, and we're going to walk over and show you the pump. All right, so in order to have water in the schoolhouse, the students would come out and pump the water and bring it in and put it in the bucket, and then they would have to take the bucket and take it into the school with them. Also, because we did not have any plumbing, there was no bathroom. Therefore, they had to have what we call an outhouse. This is what the outhouse might have looked like. Now, of course, it would not have been kept this close to the school. It would have been kept way far away because, you know what, they got kind of stinky. Right, are you ready to go in? Oh, we can't go yet. We have to talk about the dress code. And I couldn't go in if it was 1909 because I have on pants today. Girls had to wear skirts or dresses or they couldn't come to school. Very different than it is today. All right, let's go to school. All right, well, like I said, in 1909, the schoolhouse was built downtown at Bliss and Oasis. This is a picture of it when it was first built, and you can see there's nothing around it. It was in the middle of nothing. So it was really one of the most prominent buildings in the community at the time. Now, the schoolhouse itself was moved twice before it got here and is now part of our museum campus. As I pointed out, if you were coming to school in 1909, you had to wear a skirt or a dress, and the school marm, as they called her, would be dressed similar to this right here that she has on a typical outfit that the school marm would wear. You can see that our schoolroom is set up with all kinds of different desks, from little desks to bigger desks, and different styles of desks also. The reason we have the different sizes is it was a schoolhouse with all the students in one room from kindergarten through the 8th grade. Now, we always call it a one-room schoolhouse, but actually this had 2 rooms because the second room was used mostly for community activities and things like that. There is a wall between the 2 rooms that can come down, and on that wall there is a chalkboard such as the one in the front of the room. So, you know, today's schools, we have whiteboards, we don't have chalkboards. We have Chromebooks. We don't have slates, but that's what they wrote on. They wrote on slates. This is an original slate, or like an original slate, because it has wood around it to keep the slate from breaking. They would use chalk or slate pencils to write with because there was very little paper, and the paper that they did have was very expensive. So nobody got to write on paper until they got older. And sometimes by the time they were 4th or 5th grade, they'd done enough practicing with their handwriting that they could get ink. And the ink would go in a bottle in the desk like this in the hole. And then there would be the pen. They'd take the pen, get a little bit of ink, write a little bit, then they had to put it back in there and get some more. Be careful not to make a smudge on your paper. Okay. So we're in school. Supplies. Where did they get their supplies? Mom and Dad had to provide the supplies. There was no school cupboard where the teacher had things to give away, so Mom and Dad had to provide supplies. Books, there weren't very many books, so they had to share the books. Oftentimes they would be kept on the teacher's desk, and then they would have to share the books when it was time for them to use them. Lunchtime. I don't see a lunchroom. Do you see a lunchroom? There's no lunchroom here. There's no cafeteria here. So the students either went home, if they lived close enough, or they brought their lunch, especially those that lived out on the farms. But they didn't have lunch pails where they went down to Walmart and bought a cutesy little lunch pail. They had lunch pails something like this. This lunch pail was originally a pail that had lard in it. And when the lard was used up, Mom would clean it out, and that's what we used for a lunch pail. They had all kinds of different ones. This is another one that was used for a lunch pail. Okay? This building is quite different in many ways. I don't know if you can pan up or not, but the ceiling is made of stamped tin. It's very beautiful, but it's not something we see anymore. We don't have that in our classrooms, do we? And the floor is hardwood. We don't have hardwood floors in our schools anymore either. So things were different in 1909 than they are now. In many ways they were different. Also, as you look around, you see lots and lots of windows and lots of doors. That's because since there was no electricity, there was no air conditioning, there was no heat. So they had to get light from the windows, and if it was hot, they would open the windows and open the doors and try and get some air in here. Now, if it was cold, then they would be using a little stove similar to this one. And of course, the pipe would go up through the ceiling so the smoke didn't come into the classroom. But the school marm had to come in the morning and start the fire and get it going. Now, if you were lucky enough to sit in one of the front rows, you got toasty warm. But if you sat in the back, it really didn't work that well back there. So I guess you maybe just left your coat on. Although here in the desert, and you know this is a desert school, that doesn't happen a whole lot. Our schoolhouse is one place that you have done on your tour, and I hope you've enjoyed your tour a lot. And you will now be learning about other places on our campus that you could see if you came to visit.